Often the best source of inspiration for our videos come from you. Comments that are made on the threads that follow our videos often contain really great insights as to what people are thinking and wanting to know more about and discuss. The issue of corruption, it often gets mentioned in threads about this country and South and Central America. And it's a really polarizing issue. It's only simple until you think about it. There's so many facets to it. For that reason and many others, I've just up to this point not gone there, but I think that it is worth at least discussing and giving my 2 cents worth. When I'm talking about corruption, I'm talking about everything from institutionalized corruption to dealing with companies and business transactions, the whole gamut of what may come under that umbrella. It's a really big set of issues. I just wanted to focus on a few key aspects of what I commonly see brought up and just perhaps try and share our experiences in general and also provide some different perspectives on what I commonly see being shared. One of the common rub points when it comes to people that come to a country like Paraguay is when they're travelling around, particularly when they're driving. It's not uncommon that people will report that they will encounter situations where they've been required to partake in unorthodox solutions to the problems that they're facing. Let's just say that in this part of the world, that can be the case, as it can be in many parts of the world. There's various ways that these things are overcome depending on where you're at. I'm thinking about the average person who's driving along a road, perhaps going to work. Okay, well here you may get pulled over once every couple of weeks, couple of months. And as long as you've got your things in order, you've got the correct paperwork and you've got the different bits and bobs that you're required to carry in your car, you're pretty well good to go. And I will make a video about that. It's pretty clear as to what you require here. And generally, if you are above board, you can overcome most situations. Even when unorthodox solutions are proposed, you can engage in the process and usually you can walk away from it pretty much unscathed. The worst thing that can happen is maybe it may have cost you a few dollars, but when I say a few dollars, it really is compared to what you would pay for an indiscretion in a country that I've come from. Well, it's really just chump change. But there are ways that you can minimise or even avoid the pain that you may feel by driving on roads here and having to deal with officials that may propose unorthodox solutions. But when you think about the same situation, but say in the place that I came from, well, there, the average punter is being absolutely squeezed every day. In that country, one company owns almost all the tolls right across the country. They're making about $3 billion and growing every year. And there's parts of that country that people are paying upwards of 20% of their annual income just in tolls. A lot of those people are driving to work wondering how they're going to pay their silent mortgage, which is their ever-increasing rates on their home, which has become so overburdensome for a lot of people that even if you own your home outright, many people are still wondering how they're actually going to keep a roof over their head. I would contend that corruption comes in many forms. And when I think about the punter who's driving along the road here and every now and then gets pulled up by somebody and has to deal with a situation that maybe require him to provide an unorthodox solution, I think about him in contrast to the person in the place that I've come from, and I think that comparatively we get a pretty good deal here, to say the least. At least we get to partake in the process. Prior to embarking on our Central and South American odyssey, we lived in a town that had quite a few thousand people in it and serviced quite a large area. But in it there was one supermarket, and it was known by everybody who had a brain that that supermarket had bribed all of the officials that were responsible for allowing them to set up in that location. And they had employed different strategies to ensure that no other supermarket could open up in that town. They'd brought up real estate in the only other viable part of town where a supermarket could be located. So they essentially had a stranglehold monopoly on the place. If that wasn't enough, if you took the time to check the receipt of the goods that you just purchased, there would be prices that were higher at the register than what they were advertised on the shelf. Is that the crime of the century? Well, no, but it's definitely a form of corruption in my view, and it's something that everyone in that town were paying every single day to an entity that had already scammed them on the way in by virtue of creating a monopoly for themselves. My point is, we're just used to a different form of corruption. It's a softer form of corruption that comes in a silk glove and it doesn't really confront us. So we just become more comfortable with it. But when you come to a place that is more out there in terms of the way that you have to deal with those particular dynamics, it can be confronting. And I think that it's very easy for people to really get it out of perspective. Corruption is a global issue. And when people tell me that this place or many other places aren't viable because they have corruption, I just think to myself, my goodness, we really have to get a clearer perspective on it, because if that's going to be our tipping point, well, we won't settle on any place. You know, you only need to look at what they did during the experiment of a couple of years back to citizens who just wanted to voice their disapproval at what they were doing. You know, one of the criminals that were running the show in a country that I came from actually got knighted recently. She should be in jail. So when we talk about corruption and issues relating to how they affect the individual, I don't think that we have traded down, that's for sure. I feel like we're in a far better position in this wonderful little country, despite all of its quirks. But generally, day to day, when we're getting about our business here, we're not dealing with rampant issues of corruption as far as I can see. We live within our means. We're not paying outrageous bills so that entities that we've never entered into arrangements with can get their cut. There's not foreign and private interests on every level that are just sucking the life out of the society. Things are pretty simple here, fairly transparent. So I'm more than settled with the fact that occasionally I might get pulled up and I might have to manage an unorthodox request or situation. Comparatively, I'm happy with the deal. We need to enter this conversation with a level of fairness, clarity and balance. If I was a native to South America and I heard people coming from other places and making these claims, I wouldn't be all that impressed if I knew what was going on in most of the countries that we come from. I think that we need to be careful that we don't make mountains out of molehills, and then when we look at our own situations, we shouldn't make molehills out of mountains. Apart from not being fair to these countries, it's not really being fair to ourselves, because if we're not careful, we will get things out of perspective. Hola. And maybe even fail because we've come away thinking that we've gone into some situation that's so compromised that you just can't possibly deal with it. If there is a case to be said for problems relating to this country and many others, I think it's more just in the processes more than corruption itself. If there were more robust processes in place, particularly in relation to things like buying property, much of the pain would go away. We need to play a part here. This country will not just change because we hope it will. If we've come here and we've been granted residence and we intend to stay here, then we need to enter the conversation and to work towards making better ways of doing things that are more fair and equitable and provide more security for everyone involved. But when I think of corruption, the countries that I've come from and spent significant time in, they could hold global masterclasses on the art of how to not only disempower people, but to orchestrate situations and corrupt practices that most of the population are oblivious to. They're really masters at the craft. So compared to them, I think little old Paraguay and many other South American countries have got a long way to go, thankfully. I just think that in regards to this particular topic, maybe just a little bit more transparent here than many other places. And that is in some ways a good thing, because the first step to dealing with an issue is recognising it, being able to see it. But when you're driving along a road in a more developed country and your e-tag starts to blink telling you that you need to pay more, and then you see a little flash in the bush, which is the speed camera because you were distracted, and now you've got a speeding fine, and oh, by the way, you need to take your car in for a environmental protection test, and oh my goodness, it's out of date, and in a couple of years' time your insurance will be going through the roof because your car is too old. All of these things, I believe, are bigger issues when we speak about the different ways that our institutions and governments have been infiltrated by what I would contend in some cases are thoroughly corrupt and designed just to fleece you out of your freedom and your money. We need to keep things in perspective and balance and be fair, because we're talking about people's countries here, and we need to be careful that we're not tarring a whole country or a whole continent in a certain way, at least without first looking in our own backyard. Because the more that we self-reflect, I think the more that we'll realise that we've got our own things to sort out. We've got our own basket of snakes that we've ignored for too long, and now you've only got to look at many of those countries and look at what people are struggling with to see that it's really coming home to roost. So all that being said, expect that I will make future videos bemoaning the issues relating to things like buying properties here and the inadequacies in the processes. I'm not going to in any way say that Paraguay is the ideal place to come if you want to have a totally hassle-free life, free of corruption and hassles relating to legalities. Until our last breath, we're always going to be dealing with it wherever we're at. And definitely in Paraguay, there's some issues that we need to face and either overcome, avoid, or somehow blot out of our plan moving forward. And so I look forward to making that content and sharing it with you, because apart from it being hopefully interesting, the more that we all understand what's going on in any country, the better we are equipped to deal with the issues. But I also think it has the effect of shining light in the darkness. Some of the things that happen in Paraguay only happen because people haven't really spoken up about them and haven't perhaps really unpacked them in the public sphere. Sometimes when we look at things in the open, we can find solutions that we couldn't find when they were in the dark. And I'm talking more specifically about processes and legal issues more than corruption. But I think sometimes those things also get caught up in the mix. If someone gets a bum deal when it comes to trying to buy a property and they get totally ripped, that sometimes will be put into the basket of, well, that's a very corrupt country. Not necessarily so. Maybe it's just that the processes weren't in place. It wasn't robust enough. And yeah, maybe somewhere along the line, someone has taken advantage of one of those holes in the net. But I wouldn't suggest for a minute that people in this country would be more inclined to take advantage of such situations. If there were such gaps in the net in the place that I've come from, absolutely, with no doubt whatsoever, there would be plenty of people that would take advantage of that. So it may be just more that Paraguay just needs to find ways to bring in better safeguards and better solutions to the issues relating to living your life, buying property, going about your business. And as those things are improved, you'll hear less and less about people getting ripped off, losing their farm, and it all going south for them. So I think that we need to keep that in mind and not conflate the issues, because This is definitely a place that you have to be very careful about the way that you move forward, particularly financially. And there are definite ramifications if you get any part of that process wrong. But in terms of this broader issue of corruption, it's part of the world. Show me somewhere that's not corrupt. Everyone likes a different flavour of ice cream, and so they like a different flavour of unorthodox practices. I personally like it up front in a way that I can see it, and then I've got a better chance of overcoming it, or at least minimising it. But when it's done in a boardroom or a government office and arrangements are made far, far away, and all that I've got to look forward to in the process is receiving the bill in the mail, or my bank account swept, or my credit rating destroyed, I'm happy to deal with the unorthodox practices as they are here in this part of the world, each to their own. And of course, this is just my opinion. I expect a bit of pushback in regards to this video, and that's okay. And remember, it's just my opinion. Everyone's got one. Hopefully, the most important thing is that we stay nice to everyone, and just remember that regardless of what the powers that be are doing, it shouldn't turn us into vipers or snakes ourselves. We should just stay above it and just try and find better ways to do things, because that's been part of the program, I believe, is trying to convince everyone that nobody's going to do the right thing. Everything's dangerous. You're going to get ripped off at every turn, and nothing can ever work out unless the government's there to save you, of course. And that's one of the lovely things about this place. For the most part, they're not in your face. Apart from the occasional interception, we have really very little to do with Big Bro. We kind of get left alone pretty much. We live humbly because there aren't a lot of people who have crept in the back door and found ways to take a slice of that cake so that the cake has to get bigger and bigger to accommodate them. It's not so here. So that's all I've got to say about that. Interesting topic. Lots of things that I haven't explored or unpacked. Something I have to be a little bit careful about, like you have to be anywhere. It's just good to have a chat about these things, isn't it? Because I just don't like seeing things getting blown up to be bigger than what they are. Things getting taken out of perspective to the point where I know some people have been so concerned about things here. They say, oh, well, this is untenable. Just got to get out of here. Go back to what? Go back to the panopticon prison planet that they've come from, and think that they're living in a place that is less prone to issues relating to corruption. No, I don't think so. Definitely not for me anyway. But each of us will make our own decisions. So as always, thanks for watching, and until next time, take care. Ciao.